Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning into the Lead Up podcast. On this episode, number 12, I got my classmate, colleague, and friend, Tara Lynn Crawford, to share her leadership journey. I know you're going to enjoy this one. Let's get into it. Lead Up. Alrighty, we are back with another episode of the Lead Up Leadership podcast, and I have not only a classmate, but now a friend and a colleague, someone that I've gotten to know these past 2 years through the EDLP program at Sac State. And it's just funny, I went in going into the program just focused on I'm gonna get good grades, do what I do, learn, not really with the intent to build relationship with anybody, but thankful that I was able to build a relationship with a small group of people in there, and this is one of them. And this is who I call Dr. Crawford, aka Tara Lynn. So thank you so much for being on this episode. What's up? How you doing?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to get a chance to know you and to be here today. I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Not too bad. I mean, doing well as all things considered, right? Everything that's going on since, not only with staying shelter in place, but even now, right? There's fires going on all around California and people evacuating, but, still grateful to, have a job and different things of that. So glad that you're able to hop on and where we can just have a discussion and, answer some things to help some people during this time as young leaders. And so, but first I want people that are listening in to kind of get to know you more. So I'm curious, could you just share a little bit more about your background, where you're from, who is Tara Lynn, who is aka Dr. Crawford?
Dr. Crawford, Tara Lynn. Okay, for sure. So I am Tara Lynn Crawford. That's the Tara Lynn comes from that, my middle name, first name and middle name. And I'm extremely happy to be here. Of course, I'm from Sacramento, California, born and raised. I'm somebody who has seen all elements of Sacramento, from the good, bad, and indifferent. 25 years old, very passionate about Black and brown students and their matriculation through college and their career, and being able to provide or reach goals, reach their individual goals, and be able to sustain themselves as young adults. So those are some of the things I like. I like to rap. I'm an author, I'm a motivational speaker, and an artist in terms of things that I do in addition to working to higher ed.
So. Oh yeah, and we're going to touch on some of those things, especially I know you putting out a lot of music. I think you actually shot some music videos recently, but we'll touch on that later on.
Yes.
But I did want to start with higher ed and kind of going back into your own higher ed experience as a student. You go into an HBCU, and I think when we first met, as we got to know each other more, you're always talking about HBCUs and just like your passion for it, and just how great of experience you had. So just could you share about your experience at the school that you attended and some of the opportunities that you took as a student and how you grew as an individual, but also as a leader?
Absolutely. So I would say, first and foremost, and want to answer your first question, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. Definitely a woman of faith, a woman of God, who identifies as a Christian and really tries to live this life. And so in terms of, to answer your second question, I strongly believe that God used Alabama A&M to help change my life in a major positive way. Alabama A&M, it's so interesting because I remember being a junior in high school, and a few administrators, as well as some admissions counselors, traveled to the West Coast. And at that time, I kept saying, oh, I'm not going to go to Alabama A&M. It's so funny. My junior year. My senior year, I matured a little bit more and really started thinking about what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to attend an HBCU. And so I attended a career fair here in Sacramento known as the UCAN College Tour. And excuse me, it's not a career fair, it's a college fair. But I attended the UCAN College Fair here at Sac High. And when I was at the college fair, the recruiter from A&M sold the school to me like no one else, no other institution. And what she really was selling, she wasn't selling me the institution, she was selling me me in
Mm,
terms of how this university could benefit from me being there and how I would benefit from going if it was my
wow.
desire to go to college.
Yeah.
And that 2 minute conversation is now not only do we still have a relationship, but A&M has really contributes to some of my most profound memories and experiences thus far. And so I'm grateful, had a great time. I interned there. I traveled all over the world while at Alabama A&M. I was in several student leadership positions.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a profound experience. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm so pro HBCU.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
And that was, fast forward when we got to the higher ed program at Sac State, as I mentioned,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
your passion, maybe touch a little bit more of like, why HBCUs? Why is that such a strong kind of passion for you? And why should other people be interested in that, especially for people on the West Coast that, we don't really aren't blessed or privileged to have a lot of schools on our side of the state. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yes, okay. So now I'm going to come from, in addition to a passion standpoint and just my personal experience,
Yep.
I'm also going to come from an educational standpoint based on
Yes.
what I've learned in my EDLP program.
Here we
And
go.
so I think one thing that we have to consider in terms of access and opportunity for African American students, the access and opportunity to attend college was very limited, and it wasn't very long ago when that access was limited.
Mm,
And so HBCUs HBCUs were created as a form of access and opportunity for African American people or those of the African diaspora to attend college to possibly better themselves
correct.
in terms of receiving better employment. And so that is one reason why someone should attend an HBCU if you are of the African diaspora or African American, however
Hmm.
you like to identify, being that this is something that is intentionally established and developed for you. That's number
Hmm.
one. Number two, and I have had the experience of attending both an HBCU, and I wouldn't necessarily consider Sac State a PWI, but an HSI. So,
Correct.
or
Correct.
so okay. So, in consideration of that, the instructors there,
Hmm.
the curriculum, everything that you're going to learn is the same except for your experience. It's such a blessing and a privilege to be able to learn from people who look like you.
Yeah.
It's such a blessing and a privilege to be able to see such positive examples of leaders. A lot of the professors teaching at HBCUs aren't only professors.
Mm,
Now, they have had their own individual life experiences.
right.
Some have been leaders of top corporations. For example, a case in point, Alabama A&M, the dean of the College of Business, he's a multimillionaire and
Mm,
he's have had several businesses. And so what other type of person to lead an
right.
institution and somebody who's had that experience and can directly give knowledge and wisdom to other aspiring entrepreneurs on how to do it, and he looks like you. This
Yeah.
just one, not bragging on my university,
No, yeah.
but that's those are the reasons. So the experience is something that's
Hmm.
established for you. And lastly, I would say the relationships that you form at an HBCU have the potential to be long lasting, and it's definitely something that is sustainable throughout your entire life. And I'm grateful for our relationship,
Right.
and I believe that we would definitely be friends for however long, for a long extended period of time, and I
Right.
can definitely foresee that.
Right.
And so not saying that that can't happen in other
Hmm.
academic settings, but it definitely happens at an HBCU. And so I gave three. I could give more and more, but
Oh, I know
those are
you
just some of
can.
the briefer
I know you
ones. So
can. Yeah.
yes. So that's
Yeah.
why.
And on top of HBUs, something else that you
Mhm.
mentioned early on was your, I think, initial desire, interest to be a university president. And
Right.
and I don't know how things
Mm.
have changed since going through this
Yes.
program, but I'm curious
Hmm.
to hear, what was your initial reasoning for that position or making that a career goal? And maybe, talk about, has that changed and maybe why has it changed?
Sure. So I definitely bef- wanted to be a university president, and that came as a goal based on my experience as Student Government Association president
Mm,
during my senior year in college. I was the SGA president, and in that setting, you're essentially the third most powerful person on campus
mm,
outside of the president and or chancellor and or uh, the chief of staff or someone who's actually in charge of the president's cabinet and outside of the people at the board of trustees, but you're actually on the board of trustees
right.
as a student representative. And I always tell people, college is a business that renders a service. Your service is your education. College is a
Yeah.
business indeed.
Yep.
And without students, i.e., customers, colleges wouldn't exist.
Hmm.
And so my experience as a student leader leading the needs and desires of the students was very energizing. I had a first look at all of the internal workings of the university in terms of the management
Hmm.
and the leadership of it. And that really intrigued me to want to go and actually pursue being a college president. And so as I went through the program, I can still say that I want to be a college president,
Hmm.
but it isn't something that is in like my immediate goal because I
Got it.
understand more the responsibilities and the
Hmm.
requirements from a actual professional standpoint.
Yeah.
And so while I embrace the challenge, I'm focusing more instead of just rushing to get there
Hmm.
to actually making a substantial impact in every
Yeah.
area as my career and build to that point so that way, when I am in that position,
Yep.
I'm definitely going to be prepared. And one of the ways that I'm doing that outside of higher ed is branching into my own forms of entrepreneurship
That's
to be
awesome.
able to show that I can sustain
Hmm.
a business because college is a business.
Yep.
So,
And
yes.
I love how you mentioned the word responsibility because,
Hmm.
in my experience, as I was growing up and even
Yeah.
right before the program and during the program, my mindset of what a leader was very
Yeah.
fixed, and that
Hmm.
changed and it very
Yes.
revolutionized as we learned right through different courses and articles and,
Yes.
and just the discussions that we're having. It's like you
Yes.
just open yourself up to understand, okay, being a leader is not so
Yes.
much, it's more than just a title, right? There's
Yes.
so much weight and
Yes.
responsibilities that in some ways I'm like, who wants to be a leader? It's so hard, right? It's like to
You
manage all
have to
these
be
different,
crazy.
right. And so I guess my question is, right, because a lot of the people that listen in, they're between the
Hmm.
18-35 years of age, and either
Sure.
they're starting off in maybe entry jobs, or maybe starting school or about to finish school, or they're wanting to
Okay.
level up, or even, as I named this podcast Lead Up, right, to with the intent to level
Yes.
up, to grow in whatever we're doing. So how do you approach
Sure.
um, when there's an increase of responsibility in your life, whether that's in your own business, your own personal life, or and maybe just
Mm,
whatever's right in front of you? How are you approaching when there's an increased responsibility in your life?
mm. Okay. So sometimes an increase in responsibility can come unexpectedly and
Right.
expectedly.
Yep.
So if I'm expecting the responsibility to come, for me, it's about preparing for that responsibility before it happens.
That's good.
And so like I'm expecting to become a millionaire. So I'm practicing having millionaire habits. And
Mm,
millionaire habits is not spending. So I'm
right.
preparing, I'm operating, I'm budgeting more. I'm trying to learn how to value the dollar more and more each day and really, not being frugal or not being afraid, but really being cognizant.
Yeah.
And so that's just one example. So that's preparing. Then when it happens unexpectedly,
Yep.
for me, it's about daily reminding myself
Yeah.
not to regret the responsibilities of my position because
Mm,
having responsibilities with being in a certain position is a blessing.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned to you, I try to live a life of faith. And so one person in the Bible that I've been studying a lot
Mm-hmm.
lately is Joseph.
Mm.
Joseph had God and increases responsibility, but Joseph, if you study his life, he has had a lot of trials and tribulations that he necessarily did not deserve. And it depends on how you would perceive his trials and tribulations. He was sold into slavery by his family, and Joseph, God gave
Mm-hmm.
Joseph so many dreams, and then he ended up being over the entire Potiphar's everything. So that is, that's a blessing, but whether that's expected or not, I believe that there's a grooming process that has to happen.
Mm.
And sometimes, even when we get an increase in responsibility and we aren't prepared, that
Yeah.
also is all of our individual grooming process. So it's about every day reminding myself not to regret what I say that I ultimately want. Because if you want to be on any type of leadership or any type of level,
Yeah.
you need to expect some type of increase in responsibility.
Oof.
And that's just going to happen. If
Yeah.
you want to do anything great, I
Yeah.
mean, anything, if you want to be a local senator, you're going to expect some responsibility. And the responsibility isn't always physical task.
Right.
It can be managing public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It can be managing your own emotions at a higher level,
Right.
managing yourself. A strong leader is a strong you first. And so
Right.
me, it's about my mentality
Mm-hmm.
and me every day. My mentality has to be there. And so,
That's fire. That is fire.
yeah.
And one thing that I do want to bring up, because I think it's something that's not really talked about until it
Mhm.
comes to that
Sure.
situation, and
Yeah.
it's this thing of uh, age and leadership.
Hmm.
I think
Mm.
for sometimes, maybe in different situations, if I was to like look back, or as I'm
Hmm.
looking now, people don't think because they're a certain age or they feel like they're too young, they
Mm.
can't get to a certain position, or they can't do certain things because I'm only this age, or I have this much left to do. But someone like
Mm.
you, when until I found out your age, I was like, whoa, she's young, but the way she
Yes.
carries herself and the things that she's
Thank
after
you.
um, is amazing. So I'm curious if you can share, maybe, I don't know, if there was an incident or maybe a moment where um, maybe your leadership, or kind of maybe you weren't taking as serious because of your age. How did you respond to that? And or maybe what could you say to maybe young leaders that don't feel like they're qualified because of their age, or just because of things that they lack?
Right, right. So this happens all the time
Yeah.
in terms of, and I used to have even a little more of a baby face. I'm starting to get on mature looks. I hope, but
No, you're good. You're
the
good.
twin, but even more. And
Yeah.
so, especially early on when I first graduated college, I was 22 years old, and I was in a management position with a
Hmm.
lead Fortune 500 company. And so to come out of school in a management position, managing over 160 employees in a setting who
Wow.
sometimes they're in their 40s and 50s. They're way older than me. They have children as old as me. So
Hmm.
sometimes that can be that can that can be a little bit intimidating or a little bit frustrating for
Hmm.
those. And so my biggest advice, though, to the young leader, to the young person who is in any type of leadership position, is to, one, understand you're not there by accident.
Hmm.
You if you're there, you deserve to be there. And because you deserve to be there, don't take it personal and don't mistreat people. Those are my sentiments to those, because with any position, you have to hold it with humility. I mean,
Mm.
and what I mean, humility is not being subservient or afraid, but humility is understanding that
Yeah.
this is the grace that you are in this position. So you have to understand that anybody else can be in it just as you are in it. So
Hmm.
don't take the responsibilities lightly, and understand and be confident that you're there for a reason,
Hmm.
and you're going to feel that reason, and don't worry about what everybody else thinks. And
Yeah.
even if someone tries to mistreat you, don't take it personal, especially in the workplace.
Hmm.
We are at work to do a job and to advance a mission, whatever setting you're in, whether you're working for corporations and it's about the bottom line, or if you're in
Hmm.
higher ed and you're working for students or if you're working for a nonprofit and you're trying to increase the initiatives,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, you're there to do your job. So do your job, don't mistreat people,
Yeah.
and you cannot worry about what people think about you. Worrying about what people think about you is going to really tarnish you on the inside. It's okay
Mm.
to be aware and
Yeah.
understand what's out there. It's great to understand. It's like the news. We know
Mm.
there's a pandemic in the news, but I'm going to be the first one on here to tell everybody I don't watch the news every day. I don't want to internalize the
Mm.
negativity of the news. I
Right.
may check the news. I might read about the news. I'll read an article before I watch CNN
Mm.
personally, just because I don't want to internalize. I'm already informed. I know what's going on when I look outside. I can see
Gotcha.
the differences of the world. I
Yeah.
can see people wearing a mask. So
Yeah.
I know what's going on. But in terms of internalizing it, no. And sometimes that's limiting. And as a new employee or a new leader, sometimes you need to, these are just tactical and practical things you can do.
Right.
You know, go to lunch with a few people, maybe just try to get to understand your
Mm-hmm.
environment before you start implementing change. And
Mm-hmm.
so that all has to do with the level of humility though,
Yeah.
because you can't go in and have that level of humility without
Mm-hmm.
feeling like you're going to go and change everything right away because
Yeah.
you're the boss. It's not
Yeah.
about you being the boss
Mm.
sometimes. Yeah.
Someone needed to hear that. It's not about you
Yeah.
being the boss. I like that. I like, and humility,
Yeah.
that's easier said than done, but it really is, it's a
Hmm.
gift, right? That I think more people
Yes.
that need to tap into. And speaking of gifts, you are very
Yes.
gifted, right? As you mentioned,
Oh,
you
thank
do
you.
a lot of poetry, spoken word, music, rap,
Hmm.
right? You wrote a book
Yes.
recently. Uh, how
Yeah.
can you share a little bit about some of those gifts, and how are you using your gifts, whether that's in your own, your own lane in terms of, starting your own
Hmm.
business, right? Or how are you using that
Hmm.
to spread a message to people or people in the community? Like, what are you doing to activate your gifts, and how are you using them?
Mm. So about like a year ago, I know that in terms of the music, that I should start doing it again. I would be, I would record and write sparingly since I was 14 years old, but avidly taking it serious. I knew last year that that was my word to take it serious, and so
Yeah.
operating and preparing and in terms of how I use my gift, now I record music. So I recently recorded a mixtape entitled Back to Normal, inspired by the current events in the world, because I'm sure a lot of people just can't wait to get back to normal.
Right.
So on the tape, I talk about a lot of different things on the tape.
There we go.
And I wrote a book, try to inspire people. I have been inspired by someone else's work at one point or another in my life and still being inspired. I still watch stuff too. I watch YouTube documentaries all the time
Mm-hmm.
for inspiration. So because of that, I know that that content is necessary. And so those are just some of the things. I try to use my social media to spread messages. Now my approach lately is different because I'm trying to reach a different demographic. So
Mm.
I'm posting more photos, but I am very known to post a motivational video
Yeah.
or something like a post or a
Yeah.
scripture or things like that, and that's going to continue regardless. So those are just some of the things. And when I'm talking to people, I try
Yeah.
to, so sometimes when I get in lifts, I talk. Sometimes I don't though. So that's I
I
don't
feel,
want to
I feel it. I feel it. Me too. Me
be.
too. I said,
It's
just,
okay.
just keep driving.
Just
Just
keep
keep driving.
driving.
Right. I hear
It's
you.
okay. I'm putting on the earphones.
Right. Right. Ain't nothing playing. Um, but going back to the gifts, because this is, again, I think for, I know in my experience, I probably had a sense of what, maybe I was gifted with, but maybe
Hmm.
I didn't think that was like, oh no, I don't think it's that, or maybe that's just putting that stuff in my head, or
Hmm.
I didn't think it was so grand compared to maybe,
Yeah.
speaking or different things of that
Yeah.
nature. How did you,
Yeah.
could you share a little bit about how did you find your gifts? Like, what was something practically that could help somebody to, like, hey, here's some things that you can do to maybe
Mhm.
solidify what your gifts are, how you can start using them? Because I bring that up because it
Yes.
is important, especially in the workplace.
Mhm.
Maybe you're
Mhm.
not in a place where you want to be long term,
Mhm.
but there are things that you can start
Mhm.
applying outside of your workplace to develop, right? Whether it's your own business,
Mhm.
a podcast, music, whatever it is. But
Yes.
there's things inside of you
Yes.
that maybe you're not utilizing within your current workspace, but you can start doing that outside of that. Does that make sense?
Mm. Absolutely, absolutely. So while listening to your question internalizing what you're asking me, I'm just gonna get it in a word. So there's many types of seasons that people can be in, and the main two types of seasons are either you're operating or you're preparing.
Mm,
Either you're really doing what you're supposed to do or you're preparing to do what you're supposed to do. And so, as somebody, even if you are and you're preparing, one thing listening is that, and something that was communicated to me by one of my mentors, is that you do your way into your purpose.
mm,
You literally do your way. So you have to do something and pay attention to yourself. Pay
right.
attention to what you like to do. Pay attention to what engages you, what you like, what you love, what makes you happy. And pay attention to the response of
Mm-hmm,
how what you do helps others. Because a lot of our purpose is that we are effective. You
mm-hmm,
know, purpose is about being effective. And we aren't here just for ourselves.
yeah.
Everything that we do, we mainly have to do it with others. Even in this setting now, where we're sheltered in place and we can't physically connect, we still have to connect with people.
Mm-hmm,
If you have your cable messing up in your house, you have to call somebody, customer service. You
mm-hmm,
have to interact with somebody. So I say all that to say, find how what you do is how it is effective
mm-hmm,
and do it. See if it's something that you truly like to do. And another key identifier of finding your purpose and navigating what you're meant to do here on earth is how long would you do something for
mm,
free?
mm,
How long could you do something solely because you're just passionate about it and
right.
that's just what you like to do? You know, and now I'm not saying to continue doing stuff for free. That's totally not what I'm saying,
Right.
because I'm not going to give that advice,
Yeah.
especially after I'm not going to I'm not going to say that, but
Right.
I will say to pay attention to what you would do for free,
Right.
and to see again how that is effective for other people.
That's
So
great. That's great.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and speaking of more practical things that people can do, what was something, a resource, a person, whether it's like a book, podcast, video, maybe a documentary, as you mentioned,
Hmm.
what was something that has helped you recently, or something that you kind of always refer back to as something that has helped you and developed you as a leader?
So there is a book out there by a pastor. His name is Adrian Davis. There's a book entitled Tears Running Down a Smiling Face.
Okay.
That book is extremely helpful.
Mm,
It talks about his personal journey of he was operating in his purpose. He had some adversities and he had his own challenges, and then he overcame them and was back operating his purpose. And how sometimes pride can stop us from wanting to operate in our purpose or telling people that we need things. And so that was one book that was helpful for me. Another resource that I like to use, I told you I like to watch a lot of documentaries.
mm-hmm.
And so uh, I'm very intrigued by a rapper. There's two rappers. One, his name is D1. I
Yep.
watch a lot of his motivational videos. D1 is amazing.
Yep.
We have similar uh, trajectories in terms of he went to college, he was working, and then he quit his job to pursue a rap career. So
Right.
I just thought that is profound. And then there's another rapper, Little Baby, who's really
Mm,
big right now, but I've actually been watching Little Baby. I
mm,
watched his documentary entitled Preacher Man
okay.
over and over and over again. It talks about how he was in prison, and then when he got out of prison, he just went full-fledged into music. And
Wow.
so just analyzing three different types of
Yeah.
people, three different types, but really learning in their stories and really seeing the drive and the motivation. And one thing that I would share here is there is going to be obstacles, but regardless of the obstacles, keep going.
Mm,
This, and I say that while we're in this season.
right.
Maybe this season is an obstacle for people. I know it's been a personal obstacle. I'm a socialite, so it's definitely
Oh
an
yes.
obstacle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely an
Yeah.
obstacle. I want to get out and I want to be around, I like being around people, but you just can't. Sometimes you have to learn while you're in isolation and while
Hmm.
you're separated. And just because you're separated doesn't mean you're separated forever.
Yeah.
This is not going to be a forever thing. I personally believe that there may be some new normacies and some
Hmm.
things that we'll do different going forward, but I don't think this is going to be a forever thing. And so understanding that and
Yeah.
understanding the pain is temporary. But
Mm,
when you realize that you're going to get to a reward by pushing through the pain
yeah.
and being able to enjoy that reward for a long time, it's worth it. So
Yeah. That's
those are
good.
some things.
That's
Yeah,
good. Yeah, yeah. It's
yeah.
definitely been personal obstacle for not only myself, but I know
Yeah.
for a lot of people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
not even just on a
Yes.
friend level, but families and different things of that nature. So,
Yes.
yeah, it's definitely been
Yes.
a difficult
Oh,
time, but
yes.
yeah. So we'll be here for
Yes.
for a minute, for a season, for sure. And in this
Yes.
season, I know you kind of already mentioned you got the
Mm-hmm.
mixtape coming out. You've already released the book.
Yeah.
You are
Mm-hmm.
in the process of starting your own business. What is next
Yes.
for you? What are you hoping in this next season of your life? What are you hoping to continue to grow or develop? And
Mm.
what can we expect to see? Pretty soon from Tara Crawford.
So I think one thing, this is definitely a character developing period.
Mm,
And so in spite of, what we put on social media and stuff, I know my personal flaws.
yeah.
I know my personal challenges. And so um, even more displaying a character when I'm even out and about and dealing with different situations, my character, I want that to be different. That's what's next.
Wow.
As well as in terms of content and things, I am preparing to start a business, an online beauty supply store, and
Awesome.
so managing the business uh, for just in the local community, delivering things and managing e-commerce,
Right.
and just continuing to serve. When you record more music, I've actually written the book already, but there's a soundtrack to the book, and
Okay.
so the soundtrack
Nice.
to the becoming for sure throughout the at the end of the year. I do want to give some things away to some college students who are out in their first year of college
Hmm.
right now, who might not have access to emergency funding or things that they need.
Hmm.
So preparing to do that. I'm not sure if I'm going to publicize that outside of this forum, but
Right.
those are just some things that I'll do next. So
That's awesome.
yes,
And if people want
yeah,
to support you or connect with you on just the things that you're, kind of working in the background, how can they do that?
yes. Sure, sure. So, in terms of support, I'm on Instagram. I communicate most frequently on that platform. So, at underscore Tarlin3, I have a website, www.taralincrawford.com. I do take donations via
Yeah.
website or
Yeah.
Cash App, Tara C3, and I will, or PayPal is more official at Tara C3 as well. And you'll be able to put in notes what you're donating for or what you like to sell them for, and I'll make sure that it's used for those specific purposes. So
That's awesome. And just
yeah,
to wrap up this episode, just because I love how and I respect how focused and how grounded you are, not only in your faith, but just in your values and who you are,
mm-hmm.
and how even you just saying, you recognize your personal flaws, and
Yes,
just the ambition, and not only just having the ambition, but the actual action steps that you're taking to make
yes,
things happen. What's
yes.
kind of like any final words that you would give to somebody that maybe is struggling to, man, I haven't even done anything, or I'm just like not feeling this,
Mm,
as we're talking about being in isolation, or just
right.
like the world is different. I'm just waiting to get back to normal until I start doing. What would you say to that young
Mm,
leader during this time?
mm. Make use of your time now. This is a pandemic. We are the generation that has been chosen to be in a pandemic, and we hope that we won't be in another one. You know, this is a rare opportunity. Although this time period is very difficult for some, as many people have lost loved ones, and my heart goes out to these people dealing with situations such as those that I've already mentioned. But make use of your time. Um, if you're not being productive right now, it's not too late to start being productive. It's
Mhm.
never too late. And I know that's a cliche, but it's literally never too late. You can start. And once you get started, just don't stop.
Yeah.
Find something to do. Find something to do. You have plenty to do. You have gifts on the inside of you. You have insight. You have something that the world needs, that you have, that only you have, and you have to give it to the world. And nobody can do what you do, how you do it.
Come on. There it
Yes.
is. Thank you
There
so
it
much,
is.
Tara Lynn, so much for being on the Lead Up podcast. I'm so grateful for you. I know we'll be connecting soon, but I'd love to have
Yes.
you in the near future, kind of catch up to hear all the great things that you're doing with all your endeavors, your business, your music, this soundtrack that I'm definitely hoping to hear pretty soon. So
Okay.
greatly appreciate you, always supporting you. So thank you so much for being on the show. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Lead
Yes.
Up podcast.
Yes. Thank you so much.